we do in this class, for those of you who don't normally attend our apologetics class, we do a review from the previous week. Well, for the benefit of you that haven't been here for the last 4 weeks, we'll do a quick review of what we have learned so far. So the last 4 weeks we've been uncovering evolution. That's what we've been talking about in the high school apologetics class. First question, is evolution true? Say it again. It depends. Very good. Good job. So the question should be what kind? Micro or macro? Because it does make a difference. So don't get sucked into the question, do you believe in evolution? Okay, clarify what it means. Yes. Okay, so don't get sucked in that. So our species is the same kind. Chuck, can you put up the our species is the same kind. Or like kind. Our species and like kind is the same thing. Yeah. No. So which one didn't belong here?
Banana.
The banana. But the other three could be different species, but they are of like kind. So they'll get you there sometimes too, so be careful of that. But realize, that's slide one. So that's what that is. So the next slide, Chuck. And I'll see if this thing works. So then we talked about the evolution of sorts, and why it's so prevalent today. And we saw in 63 how the words in textbooks jumped up from 4,000 to 40,000 words in an average science textbook. And then we saw other things that jumped in parallel, and they almost overlap exactly. Things like teen suicide rates and having single households without being wed, those kinds of things. We saw all types of things that jumped tremendously, like 1,000% or better. That goes in parallel with the evolution push. Who was president then, by the way? Yeah, Eisenhower, very good. So he is the one who pushed it for that. Okay? So when we're talking we're nothing more than an animal, well, we reap what we sow, or what has been sown. So then we looked at some primary dating techniques. Next slide. And that's plain and simple. This is the ACLU, which is the atheist group. Their goal is communism. By their own admission, their own words. It's not me saying it. He said it. That's his quote. Okay? So realize what they're really up to behind everything. So then we looked at some primary dating techniques. And we talked about several. What were the 4 dating techniques we talked about?
Radiocarbon dating.
What else? Very good. What else? Ice core drilling. Those were the 4 we talked about. Radiocarbon, radiometric, geologic strata dating, and ice core drilling. We talked about those 4. We debunked all 4 of them. Okay, we pretty much showed where they were false and their flaws. Things like Mount St. Helens. I actually saw it happen in 1980 on the TV, and they dated it as 300,000 years ago. I'm not 300,000 years old, although some of you might think that I'm not. Okay, but we saw those things, and with ice core drilling, it's like the latest fad now. We saw the Lost Squadron, a true story. If you've never seen that or heard about it, we're not going to go through the whole lesson again. Look up the Lost Squadron. They said that they were supposed to be under the ice for 1,800 years, and they've been there for 48 years. It happened in World War II, and they found these claims. Okay. Very, very, very interesting. We saw some young Earth evidences like sodium in the sea and other elements, the amount of mud on the seafloor. And the flood, by the way, answers these things perfectly. Absolutely perfectly, the amount of sodium that's in the sea and other elements and other things like that. Next slide. So then we looked at the Grand Canyon. What's this called? Close. The Khabib Uplift. So it didn't take millions of years to carve out the Grand Canyon, as they would say. It took just a couple thousand years. And the Khabib Uplift shows that very, very nicely. So last week we were talking about how Darwin thought the cell was simple. Okay? Simple. One cell is so incredibly complex that computers today, they can't even fully comprehend it. Even the advanced technology we have today cannot comprehend the cell fully. Single cells are high-tech factories, and they have artificial languages, decoding systems, central memory banks that can retrieve and store huge amounts of information. Those of you that are in computers and technology knows what memory is all about and what it can do. It pales in comparison to what the cell can do. Okay, not even close. They have precise control systems that regulate the automatic assemblage of components. They have proofreading and quality control that guards against errors. On and on. The cell is amazing. And we saw this. Remember the double helix video we saw last week? We saw all that happening in that video. We learned that one simple cell would need the right aminos out of hundreds of them And it has to happen 239 times perfectly in perfect sequential order. Okay? The cell is pretty amazing. The DNA, we talked about the DNA over the last several weeks. DNA has 3 billion plus letters, and they have to be in perfect order. The genetic code in a microscopic single-cell organism, if it were spelled out in English, would equate to more than the Encyclopedia Britannica. A lot of letters in just one strand of DNA. Okay? That's a lot. We talked about adaptions. Are adaptions and mutations the same thing? No, they're not the same thing. We learned that adaptation is not mutation. Adaptation does not accidentally alter the DNA. It does not. Beneficial adaptation, also known as what? You just said it. We said, what's the difference? Don't get sucked into the evolution question. Adaptation is what? Microevolution. Beneficial mutation, which by the way is an oxymoron, there's no such thing, is more macroevolution. Okay? So know the difference between the two. Adaptations can be beneficial, but human mutations are not beneficial. We even looked at specifically MRSA bacteria, and we even showed how antibacterial medication, how they can adapt. So sometimes the antibacterial medication won't work properly. So we looked at adaptation versus mutation. We looked at a couple of statistics, but just two last week in referencing macroevolution that showed it literally is impossible. That macroevolution literally is impossible. What were they? Do you remember? The two statistics? Nobody remembers. Did you look at your notes? That'll give you a clue. Huh? One of them, I'll give you one of them. One of them is the cell by chance. The cell by chance, for it to happen randomly, is 1 in 10 to the 40,000th power in years. That's a lot more than billions or trillions of years even. Okay? That's for the cell, just one cell, to come into chance by itself, randomly, natural selection. Okay? And then we look at a functioning protein. To have a functioning protein by chance is 1 chance in 1 to the 74th power, or 1 chance in 100 trillion, 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 trillion. That's just a protein, which isn't even a full part of the cell. Okay? And we give an example of what that number indicates. If you blindfolded a man and he searched the entire galaxy for an atom that he can't even see, the entire galaxy, that's how large that number is. That's the chances of a functioning protein coming into existence on its own. Okay? So that was the last several weeks, and last week specifically the cell. Realize we are fearfully and wonderfully made. It's not evolution at all. Okay? You have a handout that talks about God and DNA. You can read that later, but it's pretty interesting. Written by Ravi Zacharias. Actually, he kind of paraphrased somebody else's work. One of the pictures is a stained glass window, designed and made. The other picture is a cross-section of the DNA. It's pretty amazing how spectacular they both look. Now, why would we think that stained glass window is designed and made, which it is, but then you look at the DNA and say, oh, it just randomly happened. Okay? Interesting article. Read it later. Not now, because I don't have time. I was going to if we had more weeks, but we won't get into all that. Okay? It's really cool about design. Today we're going to talk about aliens and ancient man. Okay, pretty interesting topic. So realize when some people start seeing that macroevolution isn't true, and they start contemplating things like, why are we here? What about our origins? What happens when we die? Those types of things. And they don't want to accept Christianity because maybe they want to be in control, or they don't want to answer to a higher authority. They don't want Christianity, so they turn to other alternatives. That's one reason why. Or maybe they're really convinced of something because they haven't tested their worldview. Does anybody remember the questions for testing your worldview? Very important that you test your worldview for truth. Does anybody remember those? Actually, we did a review of it in week 1, but especially in the last quarter, we covered that. Anybody remember? All right, so just briefly, I won't give you all of them, but just a couple of them. Here's how you test your worldview for truth. First, you need to ask, is it logically consistent? Meaning, is it coherent, not contradictory at all, okay? Is it logically consistent? Next is there historical and empirical evidence? Or is there a way to verify? Okay, where's the evidence for this stuff? And then thirdly, you should say, is there experiential relevance there? Just saying, I like this belief because it works for me. Well, that doesn't make it existentially viable, okay? So you need to test your worldview no matter what it is, including Christianity. By the way, Christianity answers all of these and more very, very well, better than any other, okay? But whatever the worldview is, if you're talking to somebody else and they're not sure about something, hey, have you tested your worldview? Is it consistent? Is it logical? Is it coherent? Those types of questions, okay? So when somebody doesn't test their worldview, or they're convinced of something, or maybe they just want to be the God of their own life. Okay, maybe that's what it is for them. Then they're misled. And one of the misleading things that's becoming really popular today is aliens. You see it all over the place. This is nothing new. The adversary has been doing this for a long time, distorting or trying to replace the Bible. Okay, since the beginning of man, it's been going on. Nothing new whatsoever. Some of it has to do with talk of life on other planets. That has a lot to do with it. I'm not going to give that one a lot of time, but your next handout, besides your notes, will show why, not all, but some of the reasons why we have life on this earth. And it's not just about having water. Whenever you see them searching the universe and these different places, oh, we found water. Really? That's great. You need a whole lot more than just water to have life. And that paper shows it, okay? Besides that, remember the constants and the laws of physics we talked about in week 1 and last quarter? How finely tuned they have to be? That's not even listed on your piece of paper that I gave you. So realize that. A lot of stuff goes into having life, not just water. It takes much, much more. So we've ruled out macroevolution over the last 4 weeks. And even if they find microorganisms, that does not mean there's life. A lot of this has to do with science fiction, believing in science fiction. The number one entertainment source out there today is science fiction. That has a lot to do with it. Think of this. Here's a different perspective. Where did Christ come to live and then die and then rose again? Where did he come? To earth. Yeah, that's a pretty easy answer. At least if you read your Bible, you'll know that. Okay, he came to earth. Keep this in mind. He was and is our Redeemer. He came to earth. So obviously, we're pretty important to him. I would say extremely important to him. Okay? So that's some more evidence for that there's not life out there in the universe somewhere. So let's recall a few things that Mr. Bates, was anybody here when he came and spoke? Did anybody hear him? Okay, several. Very good. Excellent. So we'll do a quick review of some of the things he said and then elaborate. So for those of you that weren't here, you'll get the benefit of hearing some of the things he said. So he said there's 150 UFO sightings every day, and no two have ever been alike. They defy the laws of physics, fly at incredible speeds, thousands and thousands of miles per hour, fly into one another, become one, and then go into another direction. Okay? Sometimes when seen to go to the ground at full speed, do a U-turn and go straight back up at full speed. They have been known to abduct people. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And then the abductee and the alien goes right through a wall. Okay? So it's pretty phenomenal stuff that people have experienced out there. Well, it started to become obvious to many that aliens could not travel thousands or millions of light years across the universe, which would take multiple generations to make a trip. So let's look at some reasoning for why this couldn't happen, okay, making trips across the universe as we know it. Just in our galaxy alone, what's our galaxy's name?
Milky Way.
The Milky Way. By the way, I don't have any treats to toss out. For those of you that aren't on the class, when you get the right answer, I'll throw you a Milky Way or a Snickers or something like that. Because we're in here, we're not going to do that. We don't want to trash the place, okay? Especially when churches come in here next. So, sorry, no treats today. Whoever gets the most right, you keep up with it, and I'll buy you lunch. How about that? All right. So keep up with it. Yeah, I'm serious. If you do it, we'll take you out to lunch. So, our galaxy is the Milky Way. How far across is the Milky Way? 100,000 light years. So Zach's up already. He's got one. So if we traveled at the speed of light, which we can't do, how fast is the speed of light? Very, very fast. It's not that great. How fast is the speed of light?
186,000 miles a second.
186,000 plus a little bit per second. Okay, keep that in mind. That's per second. Okay, how many seconds are in a year? A whole lot. There's over 31 million seconds. I did the math last night. Okay, over 31 million seconds, and light travels at 186,000 miles per second. Okay, so it would take 100,000 light years, not years. That's why they're light years, just to cross our galaxy, just our galaxy. Let alone the 100 billion plus other galaxies that are out there, okay? So there are many issues that can't be overcome. As you can see, the distance for a light year is huge. Realize that, a huge amount. It's not a year, it's a light year. It's distance, not time, okay? So a couple of the issues. The brain power that will be required to be handed down to each generation. Think of it. If you're going to be in your spacecraft for probably hundreds of thousands plus years to travel 100,000 light years, you're going to have multiple generations of people because nobody lives that long. So everybody would have to be nuclear physicists to fly the spacecraft, okay? Remember, you're traveling 100,000 light years. This is just for our galaxy, okay? The energy that would be required to travel that long for a single spacecraft would be incredible. It takes energy to slow down in space. There's not gravity out there like we have on Earth. There might be in some places, but not like here. So to slow down takes as much as it does to speed up going through space. The space dust, when you're traveling these incredible speeds, realize those things are like bombs hitting your spacecraft, okay? So space dust would be a huge issue. Cosmic radiation would be fatal. The G-forces would destroy life. Advanced technology can't overcome the laws of physics. And as you go faster, and even if that's not enough for you, even if you could go the speed of light, as your speed increases, your mass increases. So it becomes infinite, meaning you would have to convert every atom in the universe to energy. So it's literally impossible to do space travel as we know it. At least long, long distances. Maybe to Mars and back, but not like how we were thinking of aliens kind of thing. So what's going on then? Okay? One of the true UFO believer groups out there, they go by the name of interdimensional hypothesis. And they say that these beings talk to them by channeling. So the alien uses a human body to talk. What does that sound like to you? Well, they're crazy. Okay. What else? Huh? Fortune teller is a good answer. What else? Say it loud. Say it. A demon. Yeah, it is. Exactly. It's demonic. Okay. They're channeling. Okay. You see this all the time. Psychics, tarot card readers. Okay. Think about these things. They're using a human body to channel. They're even saying that. They're even using that language. Okay. So it's demonic, plain and simple. And we'll show why. We're not just going to say that. In Apologetics, we show why. Okay? So we're going to go into that a little bit. This has become a religion and a substitute for Christianity. Even some saying that the aliens are God. They even some of them have Bibles where they substitute the word God for alien and use the Bible. But say the aliens are the ones who did all this and created everything. Realize that. It's becoming more and more popular. Whatever they can do to replace God, they will. So some sightings might be experimental, maybe armed forces, maybe NASA, those types of things. Over 90% of sightings can be explained naturally, no problem. Some probably, plain and simple, just made up. People maybe want some notoriety or somebody to be seen on TV or something. So many of them are made up, but some may truly have been seen and are strange and do defy the laws of physics like we just described. By the way, the Bible records things that are from another dimension, that are interdimensional. Anybody know of an instance? Anybody?
Transfiguration?
Transfiguration, yeah. Well, think of it like this. God came to earth in flesh. Okay? There's one. So God entered our world. Okay? He entered our world, and he became flesh. It's been said that there are 10 or so dimensions. Do you know, has it been said there was more than that? Do you know, Todd? Up to 26 dimensions. Some say, but we can only know about 4 of them. But however many there are, that's kind of beside the point. It's just to say that there are many dimensions out there that some scientists say that they can discover. But how would something defy the laws of physics? How would that happen? Well, one way would be for these beings to be from yet another dimension. If there's 10 or 26 or whatever, there's one more. There's always one more dimension that we can't know or come to know. The best example I can give you to keep it real simple is if I had a sheet of paper, I won't say my hand is a sheet of paper, it's 2 dimensions, okay? And then you take a third dimension, a pencil. This is a pencil with the third dimension because it has depth to it. And if it were to come in, poke through the paper, and move around crazy, and then disappear because it's from another dimension, that's kind of what these UFOs, aliens, experiences, demons, demonic, are doing. And that's exactly how it looks to people who actually see these types of things. Okay, very plain, simple illustration, but hopefully you see it's another dimension that enters the dimensions that we know, moves around those whatever it does, and then disappears. Hopefully that illustration makes a little bit of sense, okay? This is what an additional dimension might look like to the dimensions that we can know or that have been observed. These beings are demonic, and they are from another dimension. So the things experienced could appear these ways that have been reported. Turn to Ephesians 6. Ephesians 6, if you have your Bible. Ephesians 6. And while you're turning, I'm going to read this to you. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So realize we're not wrestling against flesh. We're wrestling against things that are from not of this world, okay? And then 2 Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 14 says, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So, that kind of goes along with that verse, has more than just that meaning, but it certainly can apply to this. Realize some of these phenomena that really have been experienced are demonic. This isn't new, by the way. This has been going on for a long time. There are shows out there called Ancient Aliens. And they have drawings on the walls of alien people, okay? This is nothing new. It's been around for a long, long time. By the way, John Keel, who's a leading researcher, said one of the things that stopped them, that stopped the abduction or the appearance of them, was when they used the name Jesus Christ to stop them. So that's pretty powerful. That ought to give you some more clue as to the fact that these are demonic things happening. John Keel, again, leading researcher, he wrote on this. By the way, he's a non-Christian, or at least he wasn't when he wrote this article. He wrote on this. So let me give you a quote from what he said. This is a leading researcher, non-Christian at the time when he said this. He said, quote, the devil and his demons can, according to literature, manifest themselves in almost any form, can physically imitate anything from angels to horrifying monsters with glowing eyes. Don't forget 2 Corinthians 11 I just read. Strange objects and entities materialize and do materialize in these stories just as UFOs and their splendid occupants appear and disappear, walk through walls, and perform other supernatural feats. He goes on to say, occurrences described in this imposing literature are similar, if not entirely identical, to the UFO phenomenon itself. Victims of demon possession, listen to this, very key. Victims of demon possession suffer the very same medical and emotional symptoms as UFO contactees. Wow. If that's not proof for you, I don't know what else we can say. Just let you see that these are demonic things that are happening. Okay? There's tons of information out there about demonic activity, but whatever the devil can do to deceive you, he will. He's a liar and the father of lies, the Bible tells us. Matthew 24. Turn to Matthew 24, verse 24. Matthew 24, verse 24. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Okay? Key verse. And then 1 Timothy 1 says, neither give heed to these fables and endless genealogies, which ministers questions, rather than godly edifying, which is in faith, so do. So realize these things. One of the interesting studies that gives evolution a hard time is answering the question, and this goes along with our alien investigation, is how smart was ancient man? Have you ever thought about that? Gil gave me a book that is called The Genius of Ancient Man. Great book. Fantastic book. I would recommend reading that if I were you. But how smart was ancient man? Have you ever thought about that? If evolution were true, and how they present man, then we come from the goo to the zoo to you. Have you ever heard of that? Nobody's ever heard of that? One or two? Okay, so the goo is basically primordial soup. That's what they say that we come from. The zoo would be ape-like beings that, we have morphed into, and then they live at the zoo, can't communicate very well, and then, of course, to you. Okay? So that kind of describes evolution in a nutshell, from the goo to the zoo to you. Okay? But the point is that these Neanderthals, and we'll look at them briefly in just a minute, weren't that smart, according to what they say. And this would show evolution is true, right? No, it doesn't show anything. Okay? Again, we're going to see that intelligence, it must have been from advanced civilization, not some dumb Neanderthal. Okay? And we will look at these prehistoric Neanderthal people in just a minute. Hopefully we'll have enough time to cover a few of them and debunk some of those myths. But if we can see that in ancient times we were really smarter than we give man credit for, wouldn't this give evolutionists some troubles? Well, yeah, absolutely, sure it would. So let's look at a timeline. Next slide. Yeah, timeline. That shows some of the ages for men recorded in the Bible. Now, this shows how many generations overlap. Okay? You can see at the top, those are hundreds of years across the top. And this is just a few of them from Adam down to Enoch. That's just several generations there. Next couple of slides will show even more. Pretty significant for several reasons, but one is being able to pass on information from one generation to the next and the things they've learned. Second is the ability to collaborate. Think of some of the great scientists had lived for hundreds of years. How much more could they have accomplished? Say if they lived 10 times longer. And we'll discuss how and why they lived so much longer when we do this series, The Flood, this fall. Next one, Chuck. But think about it this way. What if Einstein, Newton, Kepler, some of the great scientists, what if they all lived at the same time and even worked together for 500 to 800 years? What kind of things did these men have come up with? What kind of advancements would we have today just from them? Okay? So realize the fact that these people lived so much longer and had so many generations that overlapped. They had some great advancements in those days. Plus the fact that their genes were less compromised. And we're going to get into that just a little bit. I believe these people were a lot smarter than we are today. But don't be offended, okay? Because I'm in the same boat. I'm alive today. All right? But Genesis 1:26 says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness." So man was made in God's image. So Adam, being the first man, was perfect. And he learned from God, the perfect teacher. Could you imagine the schoolwork that he had to do? The things that he was able to realize being how he was directly taught from God. But let's look a little more why. Your DNA, your genetic code, or your chromosome, okay? It looks like a twisted ladder. We saw this last week in the double helix video. If it were regular size, it would stretch from here to Chicago, okay? And everybody should know what the DNA double helix looks like. If you don't, I'll show you a video later on. It's really pretty cool. Well, half your genes, a gene, by the way, we learned last week, is one of the rungs on the ladder. Half from your mother, half from your father. So what happens is, the ladder, the DNA, half from your mother, half from your father, it unwinds, splits down the middle. Both line themselves back up in perfect order. Again, we saw this last week in the video, how these molecular machines each have a function, and they do it perfectly. It's absolutely amazing how it happens. But that's just one chromosome, and you have 46 per every cell in your body. Little side note. This kind of brings new meaning, too, to being born again, to being regenerated or regened. Next time you think about being born again, think about it in those terms. Pretty cool to think of it like that. Born into a new family, okay? Anyway, they lived to be 900 years, in part, not the only reason, but in part due to a pure gene pool, okay? So Adam and Eve's genes were perfect. Okay, we have a genetic load, meaning about 4,000 of these or so are defective. Sort of like a computer program where something has gone wrong. And we talked about mutations and how they take away from information. And that's why if you marry closer than a first cousin, there's a high probability that you have a similar gene code, and both may have the same defective genes. This is where the issues come in with having children, okay? But the original creation didn't have these defects. One, they had to intermarry, what other choice was there? But two, they could without issues because they didn't have these defective chromosomes. So obviously, they became more defective as time goes up till today. More on this, again, when we look at the flood in the fall series. Anybody know anything about dog breeding at all? I know just a little bit just because we have purebred dogs, okay? But I can tell you from experience, if it's a purebred dog, they'll have more issues like allergies and other things, much more than a mutt. Well, this is part of the reason why, because their gene code is so close to each other, defective. There's many other reasons why they live longer, which contribute to being smart. Perfect environment, perfect food supply, more oxygen. Maybe it was pressurized. Again, we'll cover this in the flood series this fall. But many evidences for a long life. We're just going to look at their intelligence. Like I said, this would give evolutionists a major problem, a major issue, okay? Because it would show the opposite of evolution. So ancient people were advanced in astronomy. We find many structures today that were built in alignment with the constellation of the stars. They appear to be very important part of this culture. Like from the Greeks to the Mayans and many other cultures around the world, you can start seeing some of these things. Keep growing, Chuck, about every 30 seconds or so to this live. Okay, think about some of the structures they built, the architecture and the construction it took. Researchers scramble and they cannot figure out how these things were these impressive buildings were built. Okay? They moved and placed huge stones. Even today's equipment can't place so perfectly. Like from the pyramids of Egypt, some of these are from there, to stone structures from Britain to Peru, odd polygon shapes, fit together perfectly like a puzzle with no mortar. Even underwater cities have been found that have the same megalithic-type construction. Many of these projects were thought to have been completed around, commonly dated back to about 2000 BC. Imagine that. What happened roughly around that time? The flood. Soon, close to that time, okay? Some of these have been done extensive research which have reported that they have been machine work type artifacts, as well as high velocity drills and saws and industrial quality lathes. They've given evidence for silicon carbide looped wires that even today are used for cutting granite and other hard rocks. These people were smart. They were really advanced, okay? Sculptures even fit together like Legos. I mean, today's computers can't do it. Even pieces that are so difficult to piece together, the equipment today has a hard time just designing them, letting alone putting them together. They had advanced sanitation, irrigation, maps, and boats. All were designed. Music and art that have been discovered that are incredible. And, of course, a lot of pyramids like you have been seeing. Okay? These things are just incredibly fascinating. Ancient man was genius. And this is a major issue for evolutionists. So we've just discussed long life, pure genes, direct knowledge from the Almighty. And I saw a show that was showing these pyramids and mounds. Anybody want to guess the name of the show?
Pyramids.
Ancient UFO. Okay, you see this all the time. That's what they gave the name. And they thought this stuff was so incredible, it had to be an alien because man was so dumb back then. Okay, that's the picture that evolutionists try to paint with the Neanderthals. That man was dumb. Obviously, they don't know the Bible at all. But besides these great shows, they had some pretty remarkable finds. It was pretty incredible. There are many legends out there, like the flood legend, creation legend, Ice Age legend. We'll look at the Ice Age this fall when we talk about the flood. And the Babel legends. And they're similar all over the world through all types of cultures. Okay? Does anybody know the story of the Tower of Babel? Hopefully everybody does, okay? What did God do to these people in Genesis 11? What did he do? They spoke different tongues. What else? He scattered them. Yeah, exactly. So verse 7. Let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Then verse 8, so the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build a city. If you've never read that, read that. Genesis 11 is a great story. It's the Tower of Babel. God scattered the people and confused their language. Okay? Do you realize that you hear of legends and see things like pyramids and advanced civilizations that have the same features all throughout the world that I've just mentioned? And it stems back to the Tower of Babel and what they knew. When God dispersed the people from Babel, each group would have taken their religion and technology fully formed to these new locations. Okay? They already had the intelligence. They would just take it with them. The Tower of Babel record and what God did scattering them explains this perfect. And the genius of ancient man makes for some huge problems for evolutionists. I came across, I have to speed up just a little bit, so I might skip a few things, but I came across a video where archaeologists uncovered some findings and dated it as at 100,000 years. Now, we've shown why 100,000 years, the flawed techniques in dating. We've talked about those types of things. But evolutionists dated them, and they said, these things can't be 100,000 years old because they're so incredible, the findings we just undone. And long story short, they destroyed the artifacts, so the artifacts were destroyed. The Smithsonian doesn't want these things to be uncovered because if it shows, even dated flawed dating, that it's 100,000 years old, guess what? That shows man was really, really smart 100,000 years ago, okay? So it happens all the time when they destroy things like the Smithsonian to try to cover up how smart man really was. All right, so we talked about John Keel and how he states these alien encounters have encountered are demonic activity or even people who have been possessed. Many want to chalk this up to aliens, and the adversary is perfectly happy with this. Okay, many archaeological finds, but let's talk about ancient man just briefly. Okay, remember how I've said evolution is full of assumptions and deceptions. We've said that repeatedly the last 3 or 4 weeks. assumptions, especially the dating techniques, and deceptions. Okay? Well, here's some of the deceptions. We've talked about from the you to the zoo to you and the missing link. Well, here's a few of the missing link deceptions. Java Man. Java Man was a leg bone that was human, and a skull that was found 50 foot away, and the man who found it all finally admitted that he lied about it. Nebraska Man was another missing link. It was actually the tooth of an extinct pig. An extinct pig, but they created the whole man and called it Nebraska Man. Many other examples, Tom African Man, Nutcracker Man, were actually skulls of apes. Lucy was actually the bones of an ape, and somebody finally admitted that this wasn't a human at all. Several others, all of them were deceptions. The most famous is Neanderthal Man from the Neander Valley. And it's the missing link. It's the one you see is still in textbooks and museums today, where it's the ape being and morphs up into this upright human. Well, it has since been discovered that this person had the rickets due to an arthritis deficiency, a vitamin deficiency. Okay? So it's been reclassified as a Homo sapien. But it's still shown in textbooks as Neanderthal Man, the ape man. It's not so at all. So the Tower of Babel record. Touch the last slide, first verse. And in closing, let's close real quick as people are coming in. When you look at the night sky, don't think of what else is out there. Think of the one who created it all. How awesome is He, and how much does He love us to come to this earth to redeem us? Okay? He calls every star by name, and there's billions of them. And He created the earth for us. We are special to Him. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that is who created us. That's who died for us. It's one thing to say, I know Him, but if it's not personal, then He doesn't know us in that way. Matthew 7:21, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter in the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Next slide, Chuck. Matthew 22, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then the next slide, last one, verse 23, and then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me. Don't let Matthew 7:23 be true for you. Get it right today, and if you have not, make sure that it's personal, that you truly know it.